Welcome back to the channel. So I thought I'd throw a video together talking about this little device here, which I've been super impressed with. It's called a NaviFly. It's one of the Android Auto Apple CarPlay devices. I know the internet is littered with these at the minute, but what makes this slightly different is I got it from AliExpress and it was £58. So I wasn't expecting much, but I thought I'd give it a go, and I have been really impressed to the point where I thought I would make a video on it. So yeah, as I say, this is an Android Auto and an Apple CarPlay device. The internet is littered with them. Some of the bigger names you will have heard of, more than likely, is the Chiggy, CarPlay and AOC. I think those are the three that seem to get the most content online at the minute, but there was very little on this when I bought this. Now, before, I used to have the Garmin Zumo XT. That's a great sat nav. I had absolutely no issue with it. It's just a few months ago I found myself I wasn't able to ride, and if you're anything like me, if I'm not riding, I'm thinking about riding, and if I'm not thinking about riding, I'm tinkering with a bike. So this was all that was. I was one evening just looking around on AliExpress, noticed this device for £58. I thought, well, it's got to be worth a shot, hasn't it? Let's just give it a go, see what it's like. If it's rubbish, I'll throw it straight on eBay and sell it. If it's any good, well, it was only £58 and I've done well. So what attracted me to this? Like I said, there's lots of devices available. Well, the size of this I found the sweet spot. So this is 6.25 inch. So it's about the size as a phone. As you can see, I've got an S23 Plus here, and as you can see, very similar size. Some of them are massive, some of them are too small. I found that, I consider that to be the sweet spot, especially when I've got such a big TFT. I didn't want a massive sat nav as well. So the other reason I went for this device in particular was the remote. The remote's down here. It's nice and discreet, and as you can see, I've slotted it in there in between my switchgear and the mirror, and it just looks part of the bike. It doesn't look like it's just been lobbed on there as an extra. I think that's really neat. I'll talk about the remote a little bit more in a bit. So yeah, so what is the device? Like I say, it's Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so if you've got an Android phone, it will work with that. If you've got an iPhone, it'll work with that also. And I'm not going to go into that too much. Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, that's its own thing. That's not what this review is about. I'm just reviewing this device on its own. So one of the things I was concerned about with this device, with it being so cheap, was it going to be slow? Was it going to be really laggy? But actually, it's not bad at all. I'll show you. So I've got Waze on here, as you can see. Hopefully you can see that. I'm dragging it around, and yes, there's a bit of a lag, there's a bit of a delay, but it's more than acceptable. If I just set my cruise control there. If I go to the apps themselves, so click this here. So this is all the apps that I've got installed on my phone through Android Auto that are available to Android Auto. So you can see there's quite a few. It's not all of them. That's something to be aware of. If you're not familiar with Android Auto, not every app you've got on your phone will work with Android Auto. But like I said, this isn't a review about Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. This is more about the device. So just show you the speed. As you can see, there's a bit of a delay there, but it's not bad. It's super acceptable. And the reality is, you're not actually, well, I don't actually use it that much. Once I'm up and running, I've got my sat nav running, I'm not interacting with the screen all that much, so it's more than acceptable. And then as for opening apps, if I just go into Google Maps there, you know, it's really quick. I'm really impressed with it, and I think that's because essentially all this is mirroring my phone essentially. So the speed of it is going to be restricted by the speed of your phone to some degree, because all this is like a thin client, if you will. And as you can see, it works really well. The other thing I was concerned about was, with it being a 6.25 inch screen, this is where perhaps going for a smaller device over a bigger one might work against you, was what was it going to be like to operate? Because Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, generally they're geared towards cars, and cars have bigger screens, and they're geared towards being operated with people without gloves on. Obviously we've got gloves on, our hands are moving around when we're riding. What's it like to use? Well, it's alright, don't get me wrong, I do press the wrong thing every now and then, but generally, as you can see, if I want to go to apps here, I've gone into the outlets, I've got YouTube Music there, and you can see it's a fairly small icon. There we go, got into YouTube Music. Want to go back to Google Maps again, another small icon there. It just sort of gets it right. Click that to get rid of that search. It works really well, I'm really impressed with it. So I mentioned the remote, so what can you do with the remote? Well, you've got 3 buttons. The top one just cycles between the rear view camera and then whatever application you've got running at the time. So that's really neat, very quick to switch between, give you like a rear view mirror. The middle button on here is to answer or to hang up a call, and then the bottom one is to toggle between the home screen of the device and then whatever application you've got running. And then the other thing you can do with this remote, as you've just seen there, is recording. So there's a camera at the front and there's a camera at the back. They're full HD, but they're not full HD in quality, they're full HD in resolution. I'll put some sample footage on the screen now. So as you can see, it's not full HD, so it's not the sort of footage that you could use in a vlog, in a video. You know, it's the quality's not quite up to that, but it's more than enough for if an incident happens. You know, if an accident happens around you, whether it be behind you or in front of you, hopefully this camera will capture enough of that incident for you to be able to prove that it wasn't your fault, or hopefully it's not your fault. But while I'm talking about the cameras, the way that it works is, like I said, there's a camera at the front, there's a camera at the back, and I've got a micro SD card in here. As soon as the bike turns on, or as soon as this device turns on, it starts recording front and back, and it creates separate files for the front camera and a separate file for the rear camera, but it's quite obvious when you look at the files which one's which. And then you get to choose how long those files are, because essentially it's recording all the time. You don't want massive files, so I have mine set to 3 minutes, I think. So every 3 minutes it starts a new file, and it does what's called loop recording, so I don't need to manage the SD card. When it gets full of videos, it will just start overwriting the oldest video. So it's great because you just leave it be, you never need to do anything. But what happens if an incident happens in front of you and you're like, I don't want to lose that footage? Well, that's again where the remote comes in. So I can hold, well, if I just press the middle button like I just did then, I don't know if you noticed it said take photo, but if I hold the middle button like I'm doing now on the remote, you see there it says locked video. So now the video that's currently recording, it marks it as locked and it won't ever get overwritten. So it doesn't matter how much other footage I record now, that video is locked in, it's on the SD card and it's not going anywhere. So that's another reason to have a remote, because as you just saw, it's dead easy to do. I can keep my hands on the controls, I can lock a video. It works really well. So in terms of brightness, how is the display? Well, it's spot on. You can set it to auto adjust, so it will automatically dim at night and it'll go bright when it's really sunny. It's not the brightest device in the world, but I've never found it to be a problem, and I've been using this for probably about 3 or 4 months now. So I mentioned before about operating it with your gloves, and as you saw, it works really well. But that's only because these gloves are touchscreen sensitive. It's weird that sometimes it works with, I've got some other gloves that aren't touchscreen sensitive, or don't work with, and they're not compatible with touchscreens. And sometimes it works with them, and sometimes it doesn't. I've not worked out what that's about, what causes that, whether it's temperature or something, I don't know. But I would go with the assumption that it needs gloves that have got that are compatible with touchscreens to operate it. So you might see that as a bit of a negative, because I know like the Garmin Zumo XT, it didn't matter what you were wearing, it would just work with that. Whereas this does prefer touchscreen sensitive gloves. So I'm just going to show you how quick the device shuts down and boots back up. So let's turn the bike off. As you can see, it's detected that it's lost power. So there you go, that's how quick it shuts itself off. In terms of turns itself back on, put the ignition on, we get the splash screen. I think there is a way of changing this. I know a lot of devices do that. I haven't got around to doing that, but you can put your own logo on there if you want. So as you can see, it boots into the device's home screen pretty quick. It's connected via Bluetooth already to my phone, and a few moments later Android Auto will fire back up with whatever application I last had running, which as you can see there is Google Maps. So again, I think that's more than acceptable. If you turn your bike on, by the time you get on it and put your gloves on, it's all booted up and you're all ready to go. So like I said before, I was worried about the speed of this. I thought because it was cheap, it was going to be quite a slow device. It was going to take minutes to boot up. It was going to be really laggy to use, but it's not. It boots up pretty quick, as you've just seen, and the lag is sort of more than acceptable. So while I'm off the bike, I'll show you how it's mounted. Now the device itself comes with a handlebar mount, which is designed for like 22mm bars, I think, something like that. It has a few inserts, so it'll fit a few different size bars. But I didn't want it down here. I just prefer to have my sat nav up here. That way, when I'm looking at the road and looking at the sat nav, you know, I can see it at a glance. So how have I fitted it then? So, well, I have got the Touratech mount, which you can see here, which is what I had the Sumo XT on. That fastens to the back of the TFT, and that's really good because it means it's proper solid. The devices that are mounted to the screen, I just found there's a bit too much play in the screen. So by having that on there, it just eliminates those vibrations. And then I had to 3D print something. I don't know if you better see through this, too much glare on that screen, but so I'll insert some other footage on now. But I just made a 3D printed bracket, and I designed it with a camera mount on top, which is how I've got the DJI mounted there, and that just fastens to that 12mm bar, GPS bar that sort of goes across there. And that works really well. The camera on top as well works really well. I'll just show you that on that 3D mount, even though that's not what this video is about. As you can see, it just fastens on there. I've got like a standard sort of GoPro size fit in there, which I made, and then did this extra piece here. And then this is just a generic fitting from DJI mount from AliExpress, and then I just cut the base off and 3D printed it, glued it to this 3D printed part. And that works really well, as you can see. It's nice and solid. Reconnect that. And the only other thing I've done slightly different is I've also wired in a 3-way switch. So this 3-way switch means I can turn the device off, I can set it to position 1, and then the device will come on with the ignition and go off with the ignition of the bike, which is generally where I leave it. Or I can set it to position 2, which is where it gives the device a permanent live, which means I can operate and use the device without having to turn the bike on, which is really nice. Again, while I'm off the bike, I'll just quickly show you the cameras. So, a bit shit up there, as you can see. Nice and neat and discreet. That one as well. I don't know if you noticed in the footage as well, I find the footage a little bit shaky, which I think is just, it's going to be down to the bike and how you mount it. I did buy like a gimbal thing that you can get for a drone. It's only small. Because I thought if I can mount with that, it would probably take the vibrations out. But to be honest, because I'm not using or going to use this footage in the vlog or anything like that, it's just for emergencies, just if I want to prove that it wasn't my fault. The way it is more than adequate, I think, so I'm probably just going to leave that the way it is. So one other negative I'd like to point out, which might actually be an Android Auto problem, not something to do with the device, but in the car I have the theme of everything. I have like Google Maps and Waze and everything set to the dark theme, rather than auto, which is where it switches between day and night. I just prefer the dark all the time, and for some reason on here it just refuses to honour that as a setting, and it's always in the light theme. I don't know why that is. Like I say, it might be unfair, it might not be the device, it might be Android Auto that's the issue there, but I thought I'd point it out anyway. So there you go, the Navifly, £58 from AliExpress, a front and back dash cam, Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, brilliant. Right, till the next one, bye.